You can add chemicals wherever you want. Choking during sleep, this is very dangerous. Does plant-based food contain carcinogens or not?
When you lie on your back, first and foremost, your throat has a tendency to collapse in on itself. That's when we wheeze, that's when we snore, and in extreme cases, obstructive sleep apnea, where you literally kind of choke on your own throat. Lying flat on your back like this is not ideal for breathing as well, and since your breathing affects your nervous system, affects your heart rate, all in all, it's just not a position that you'd ever want to be in if you were optimizing for health.
First of all, because the tongue can collapse if we're talking about it, the tongue can collapse and it can lead to essentially choking during sleep. This is very dangerous. A person suffocates because the tongue collapses and compresses the throat. Sleeping on your back makes breathing difficult overall, and therefore it negatively affects the functioning of the nervous system, cardiovascular system, sleep quality. Overall, it's not the best sleeping position.
Everything has defense, right? Animals can run away or fight back or hide. They have camouflage. Plants cannot run away. They cannot fight back physically, right? So they need to use other means. They can have spikes. They can have thick bark. They have all these different sorts of defenses, these barrier defenses. But if you get down to the actual flesh of the plant, they need something else. And so they actually have poisons that they can produce. They're quite abundant, as we know from the work of Bruce Ames. And I remember learning this from a cancer perspective, because it was a cancer biology class. And we learned pretty much in the first week that things like Brussels sprouts had 136 identified human carcinogens in them. White mushrooms had over 100. Spinach, kale, lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, broccoli, everything. We literally were given pages with the name of the produce and the number of identified carcinogens, page after page after page. And I was like, okay, what's the lowest number here?
Yeah.
It wasn't a single one under 60. I'm like, this is nuts.
Let's immediately draw a distinction between the substances such as nutrients, fertilizers, or growth enhancers that can be added when growing any fall plant. Let it be vegetable. This is already, so to speak, the will of man. Let's talk about plants in general as such. Does plant-based food contain carcinogens or not? You can add chemicals wherever you want. Your ready-made soup, which is already cooked from completely safe food, if you add some kind of pesticide to it, will also become carcinogenic. So let's clarify. Plant-based food does not contain carcinogens. Take plants like cabbage and broccoli. They are very beneficial plants. On the contrary, it is an anti-carcinogen. So let's not confuse things. If we're talking about different various kinds of processing, for example, when planting these plants, utilizing fertilizers, insecticides, and other means, such as combating all kinds of pests. Of course, then anything will contain carcinogens, and therefore the statement that cabbage, Brussels sprouts, our white cabbage, and cauliflower contain no carcinogens is exactly the opposite. In fact, plant-based products work as anti-carcinogens. I think the author got something mixed up here. I repeat once again, naturally, if we're talking about, in fact, artificially grown vegetables, especially where the growing conditions were violated, using a lot of fertilizers and everything else. To get a big harvest, anything can be there. Even in regular potatoes. If you buy potatoes very large, there is a suspicion that there is an excess of nitrates here, and such products should not be bought. And to claim that plants contain carcinogens, those plants listed here, is not true. On the contrary, the ones mentioned in this text and listed is absolutely not true.